Etruscan vase painting was produced from the 7th through the 4th centuries BC. It was strongly influenced by Greek vase painting. Besides being producers in their own right, the Etruscans were the main export market for Greek pottery outside Greece. In Etruria, richly decorated vases were a standard element of grave inventories. Black figure vase painting. The local production of Etruscan vases probably began in the 7th century BC. Initially, the vases followed examples of black figure vase painting from Corinth and East Greece. It is assumed that in the earliest phase, vases were produced mainly by immigrants from Greece. The first major style was so-called Pontic vase painting. This was followed between 530 and 500 BC by the Macalla painter and his workshop. They mainly produced amphorae, hydria and jugs. Depictions included chamasts, symposia and animal friezes. Mythological motifs occur more rarely, but are already created with great care. By this time, Etruscan vase painting had begun to take its main influence from Attic vase painting. The black figure style ended about 480 BC. In its final phase, it had developed a tendency to mannerism and a sloppy silhouette style of drawing. Red figure vase painting. An imitative adoption of the red figure technique only developed in Etruria around 490 BC, nearly half a century after that style had been invented in Greece. Early producers described a pseudo-red figure Etruscan vase painting, due to its differing technique. Only by the end of the 5th century was the true red figure technique introduced to Etruria. For both pseudo and true red figure, numerous painters, workshops and production centers have been recognized. Vases were not just produced for the local market, but also sold to Malta, Carthage, Rome and the Ligurian coast. Pseudo-red figure vase painting. Early vessels of this style merely imitated the red figure technique. As on some early Attic vases, this was achieved by covering the whole vase body in black shiny slip, then adding figures on top, using paints that would oxidize into red or white during firing. In true red figure, the red areas were left free of slip. In pseudo-red figure, internal details were marked by incision, similar to the usual practice in black figure vase painting, rather than painted on. As in true red figure, important representatives of this style were the Praxias painter and other masters of his workshop, which was located at Valette. In spite of their extensive knowledge of Greek mythology and iconography, not always executed perfectly, there is no evidence that these masters were Greek immigrants. An exception is the Praxias painter himself. Since 4 of his vases bear painted inscriptions in Greek, he may have been of Greek origin. In Etruria, the pseudo-red figure style was not just an early phenomenon, as it had been in Athens. Especially in the 4th century BC, some workshops specialized in this technique. Although true red figure was widespread in Etruscan workshops at the same time, examples include the workshops of the Socra group and the Phantom group. The somewhat older Socra group had a preference for cups with interior images from Greek mythology, sometimes also with Etruscan motifs. The Phantom group mostly painted cloaked figures in combination with compositions of plant or palmette patterns. The workshops of both groups are supposed to have been located in Caria, Falerii and Tarquinia. The Phantom group produced its wares until the early 3rd century BC. Changing tastes on the buyer's part spelled the end not just of true red figure but also of this style. Red figure vase painting. Only towards the end of the 5th century was the true red figure technique, with the figures as reserved areas remaining in the actual clay color, introduced to Etruria. The first such workshops developed in Valette and Falerii, but also produced for surrounding areas. The original workshops were probably founded by Attic masters, but the early vessels also already display a South Italian influence. These workshops dominated the Etruscan market until the 4th century BC. Large and medium-format vessels like craters and jugs were mostly decorated with mythological scenes. During the course of the century, the production of fallerii began to outclass that of Volci in terms of quantity. New centers of production developed in Chiusi and Orvieto. Chiusi became especially important through the Tondo group, which produced drinking cups with mostly Dionysiac motifs on the inside. In the second half of the century, production moved to Volterra. Here, especially a certain type of craters, the celebes, were produced and initially painted very elaborately. In the second half of the 4th century BC, mythological themes disappeared from the repertoire of Etruscan vase painters. They were replaced with women's heads and figural depictions of not more than 2 persons. Instead, the vase bodies were now mostly covered with ornamental and floral motifs. Larger compositions now only occurred in exceptional cases, such as the Amazonoma Chionocrata by the Hague funnel group painter. The initially, still substantial, production of fallerii lost its dominant role to the newly founded production center at Caira. The Caira workshops were probably founded by masters from fallerii. They lacked a separate tradition but became the main center of red figure vase production in Etruria. Its standard repertoire included simply painted oinochori, lekythoi and drinking cups, and small plates. By the end of the 4th century, a change in consumer tastes led to a shift towards the production of black glazed ware, which marked the end of red figure vase production in Etruria. Bibliography: Matthias Steinhardt, Schwarzfigurige vas Marere 2, Oseratisch, in Der Neue Pauli, Volume 11, Cols. 276–281.